Good morning, church. We are now well into Holy Week, Wednesday of Holy Week to be exact. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that have been happening for Jesus and will happen for Jesus throughout this week. We know the story of Jesus riding in on the donkey, the palm branches waving. But there's so much that happens in between last Sunday and this coming Easter Sunday. During that time, Jesus will have told them that he will be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. We find that in Matthew 12:40. And then later he will say that he will suffer, he will be killed, and be raised on the 3rd day. And that's Matthew 16:21. In the Gospel of Mark, there is much recorded during this time. He is at a dinner in which his feet are anointed by a woman who uses oil from an alabaster jar to anoint his feet. Fitting, I think, since there will be no time for anointing of the body before the resurrection. That story is told in Mark, the 14th chapter, verses 3 through 9. And then Judas agrees to betray him. What a powerful and destructive moment that will be in Judas's life. But very much within the will of God. For without the betrayal, without the arrest, there would be no crucifixion, no death, no resurrection. So the story of Judas's betrayal is found in Mark 14:10 through 11. Later we know that Judas repents, returns the coins, confesses of having shed innocent blood, and is told by the chief priest, who are the ones who should take care of taking of Judas's life because of his shedding of innocent blood, tell him to go take care of it himself, and so he does. But before all that happens, in between those things, or right during the time of some of it, Jesus shares that Passover meal with the disciples that he has so longed to do. And that's contained in Mark 14:42 through 12 through 21. And then he institutes the Lord's Supper, the tradition that we so love, that we celebrate here at our church once every month on the first Sunday of the month, where we remember what Christ did with the Passover meal and made for us a new covenant with blood and his body, and it becomes for us the body and blood of Christ. After he shared that meal, he asked them to go out into the garden. He had already washed the feet of the disciples, and now he asked them to come and sit with him and be in prayer for him as he goes into the garden and really wrestles to prepare for this monumental task that God has sent him for. And it's a struggle of wills. It's a struggle of the humanity of Christ seeking to get in line with the divinity of Christ and the will of God for that. And during that whole time, Peter is probably sitting there remembering and thinking about what Jesus has said, that he would deny Christ 3 times before the rooster crows. Maybe when Jesus comes back and finds him sleeping, Peter thinks, oh, well, that's what he's talking about. No, this will be much more specific and much more clear, an actual denial of being a disciple of Christ. That all happens between Mark 14th chapter, between the 12th and the 42nd verse. Then we know that Jesus is arrested. He's seized. He's placed under arrest. He's pushed very hurriedly through several trials, all of them illegal, not following the formulas that they're supposed to follow, and declared guilty. First of blasphemy and then treason. All of that you can read in Luke chapter 22, verse 70 through chapter 23, verse 24. And then finally, we have all the disciples leaving and fleeing him. You can find that in Matthew 26, verse 56. All throughout this time, alone and forsaken, Jesus endures then torture, scourging, humiliation, insults, mockery, spitting in his face, the agony of walking that humiliating walk up to the cross, to Golgotha, and then the actual horrors of the crucifixion itself, as he is left suspended for 6 hours, the last 3 of which are spent in this eerie darkness that follows over the whole land. I remember my dad was a part of a motion picture company called Sun Classic Motion Pictures, and I remember them talking about the filming of a movie of Christ's death, and he said that during that filming, that the sun actually disappeared and dark clouds rolled in, and it was just eerie and ominous. And he said, as the actor playing the soldier looked up at Christ and spoke the words that we now know are said, that I believe he might be the Son of God, then there was such an overwhelming, just an overwhelming sense that this was truth. What they were seeing played out in front of him was a recreation of the truth of the gospel. By 3:00 that afternoon, Jesus utters the words, "Father, into thy hands I commit thy spirit." And he gives up his life to the Lord. He died. That's recorded in Mark 27:50. In Mark 15:37, in Matthew 27:50, and in Luke 26:46, and in John 19:30. All 4 Gospels make it very clear that he died. Then there are 2 men, Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, who take him down and prepare his body for burial, but because of the hurried nature of trying to do it before the actual Sabbath, it's placed in the garden tomb without the anointing that would be traditionally done. And because of the fact that Jesus had declared that after 3 days he would rise again, the Pharisees and the soldiers secured that tomb with a very large stone, one that would have been rolled in front of the entrance to block any escape or any entrance into the space, and that guards were sent around it to make sure that there was nothing done to that tomb after it's been sealed. There in that tomb, he would have laid lifeless. He would have been untouched and unseen until the very hours of the morning on the first day of the week. That's where we'll come back into the story on Easter morning. What I think we need to hold on to this week, and it's somber and it's sad and it's heavy, and if you expected a lighthearted or a hope-filled message today, I think that the hope for that moment, for those people who walked that earth with him, who sat at that last table with him, it was hidden. It was covered under despair, under grief, under maybe even shock. Because I think up to the very end, I think they thought Jesus would do something mighty and profound, never expecting for it to come after death. And so I think there would be a heaviness, a wondering, how could everything that was said be true, and yet this now be the moment in where they stood? So I invite you to ponder the darkness of the tomb that was necessary because of our sin, so that you may profoundly understand the grace that comes on Easter morning. I know we've gone longer than our normal devotions, and so I'll just end with this. While this might feel dark and heavy and hopeless, hope is coming. It was promised that he would be killed and be raised up on the third day. And that truth, that foundation of our faith, we will celebrate on Sunday morning. So come join us then. Also be prepared to join us Thursday night at 6 o'clock for a Holy Thursday service, and Friday at 6 o'clock for a viewing of the Passion with appropriate videos for the children on those nights as well. God bless you. Amen.